I'm Joel Melchiori, the head of the Cultural Office of the Embassy, and I have the great pleasure to introduce the Italian ambassador to the United States, Marco Peronacci. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Joel. Thank you to all of you for making it tonight for this exciting evening. And first of all, since, of course, my wonderful staff prepared a serious speech with the right names, since I'm very new here, arrived on Monday, and I had the big honor to present the credential to President Trump on Friday. And so tomorrow I'm departing for Texas for my first mission, and I have the pleasure to host this. I see the curator who instructed me about the exhibitions already on Saturday morning, but I'm so happy to start my mission here in such an intensive mode. But I first of all really want to acknowledge the presence of senior official Darren Beatty, who we had a little chat and explained to me is in charge at the Department of State of course, public diplomacy, but also with all that has to do with culture and cultural relations and new ideas, and events such as these are an example of what we will be doing together. And I'm very happy, Darren, that you could make it today. It's my first event, a cultural event here, so it's important here. And of course, I also want to acknowledge the presence of Assistant Secretary Simon Bland of the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you very much for being with us. Of course, also colleagues and friends. I really have to say that I am so delighted to have you here. It's a first time for me. It's difficult times, it's times of wars, conflicts, and we think that it's a time when the partnership that we have with the United States can and should make a difference in terms of partnership for peace. We are very much supportive of the efforts of President Trump for negotiated settlements. We know he's working a lot, and I say all that because we consider cultural diplomacy as a terrific tool to foster these partnerships, and we think that we want to build a world where this is really the way forward. And of course, tonight we gather here to see an exhibition celebrating an Italian artist, Fortunato Depero, who lived also in difficult times, but showed resilience, creativity, and ability to think out of the box. And you will see from the works that he has done that is very much connected to the United States, to the reality of New York that was seen at the time as the city of the future, and his immediate grasp and perceptions, he converted them in its work and brought them to Italy, where there was a wave of a literary movement, the futurism, that of course soon expanded into many other areas: visual arts, advertisements, fashion, music, theater, but also support to companies. And all these dimensions go together, they must go together. Culture is not something abstract, it's something that it is in our life, it is in the blood of Italians, it is a strength of our communities, it is the reason why we are such a resilient nation. And I was telling Darren that we are the 5th world exporters because we produce things because we like to do things, and this creativity is very much connected to art and culture. So this is just to say that I'm super happy that we are here. I would also like to add that we are working on the shoulders of some work that has been done in Italy, because we had an important exhibition on the time of futurism in Rome at the National Gallery, curated by the National Gallery of Modern Art, who is the director, Cristina Mazzantini, who is also the lady that has actually helped with the putting in the Italian residence the collection of Villa Firenze Contemporanea, which is a fantastic selection of contemporary works of art that I have the honor to host in my residence, and also which wants to give the full picture of an Italy that is very much connected to its classical heritage, but also very aware of its push towards new ideas, innovation, and be in touch with what's happening today. The exhibition in Rome, of course, was very comprehensive, and it had important loans from leading American cultural institutions, because when I was mentioning to Darren, we want to do things not just to present what we have in Italy, we want to do things together. We want to connect the two countries, and so it was the MoMA, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and many others. So I'm also happy to acknowledge the presence tonight. I'm told of the director of the National Gallery of Art, Kewin Feldman. Kewin Feldman should be here, maybe later. But I would like just to add a few words about the artist. Fortunato Depero was a visionary artist, and he stands out as one of the most original voices in the European cultural landscape of the 20th century. This way of connecting art, design, communication was at the time not warranted at all. Through nearly 50 works, including drawings, collage, and paintings, the exhibitions that you will see tells the story of this of his innovative language and highlights this extraordinary connection with the United States. You will see covers from the Vanity Fair, the New Yorker. You will see the project that he conceived during his stay in New York between 28 and 30. And the exhibition will be open throughout the fall until January 26, and then we will, of course, move to New York. And Depero was actually one of the few futurist artists that had the opportunity to experience the American metropolis, the American experience firsthand, and you will see that this makes a real difference. And at the time, he clearly lived the city and understood the modernity, speed, energy that would come from it, and you will see that somehow converted in its work. And of course, all this helps us to make the connection between the value of our contemporary cultural heritage alongside the classical tradition. I would say also this embassy is an example of that. It was built by an important architect, and you will see that its plan wants to somehow pick up one of the characteristic of Washington. Washington is cut by the Potomac River. You will see that the whole building is kind of cut in a way that is divided in two, and it is a way to somehow adjust the plans to the environment, to where we are. And it's a characteristic of big architects and artists to always try and insert the environment in their creations. And I think that it's a fantastic place to work here. It can help us to provide support for events and be a laboratory of projects to come. And I'm very happy now that you will all see these things together. We'll all see these things together. But before that, I think I need to pass the floor to somebody who knows much more about this artist. And I'm very happy to welcome Maurizio Scudiero, who is the curator of the exhibition and director of the Depero archive, the man without which this could not have been arranged. And thank you for making this possible. And I want also to acknowledge the presence of Vesela Sretenovic, this scholar and curator of modern contemporary art, and of Nicola Lucchi, the director of education research at Magazzino Art Foundation, New York. Thank you for coming here. And of course, I want to thank David Sandrini of Start Management for making this exhibition possible. I know how much he is instrumental in that. I would like and have to end by thanking Campari, because Campari is very much not only in the paintings, but will also be in our glasses, thanks to our fantastic sponsors. And Campari is represented tonight by Marco Barassi. Thank you for what you're doing for this. I think that you will see Depero had a clear understanding of how Campari how good is Campari, and this figures prominently in its painting. So thank you to all of you again for coming here, for being with us. Thanks, Darren, once again for your presence. It's a big honor that you are here. And before we hear the curator, I am very honored to pass the floor to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, and congratulations on your new appointment. And what a way to kick off the new job. I think this is a tremendous occasion. I'm very honored to be here to speak with you all and to appreciate this great art and to have a shared cultural experience. So it's an honor to welcome Ambassador to Washington following his distinguished service as Italy's permanent representative to NATO. As a two-time alumnus of the State Department's International Visitor Leadership Program, otherwise known as IVLP, we are delighted to have him return to enhance U.S.-Italian relations. Two-time IVLP, that is like the diplomatic exchange equivalent of being inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. Only a few people enjoy that distinction, and this is a very appropriate example of that. And I'd like to also extend heartfelt gratitude to former Ambassador Zappia for her outstanding leadership in strengthening U.S.-Italy coordination on global issues. We had great conversations together and look forward to continuing our strong bilateral dialogue and enduring friendship. We are grateful to Italy's commitment to increasing defense spending, its leadership at the Ukraine Reconstruction Conference in July, its role as a host to more than 30,000 U.S. service members, and many, many other things that we could go down the list and acknowledge. But today is very much a cultural event, and I must say I was especially pleased to hear that this was a celebration of Italian futurism. And I won't go on a digression here because I know we have genuine experts, but if you'll permit a layman's digression, I just think it's very appropriate, given all of these attitudes toward technology, a lot of anxiety, a lot of hesitancy. I think it's extremely appropriate to reintroduce a perspective that really created the aesthetic conditions in which technology would ennoble rather than diminish man, in the context of vitality, courage, vigor, and just a incredibly forward-leaning posture to life and its changes in all of its forms. And so I think it's a very appropriate occasion to kind of celebrate our relationship with Italy, and hopefully we can approach this relationship with the same kind of vigor and vitality, and I have every expectation that we will do so. So in both the United States and Italy today, we see what Fortunato Depero imagined: business, culture, and art intersecting. As we celebrate this vision, we also celebrate the enduring U.S.-Italy friendship. The American and Italian connection reaches back to our young country's founding. Italy's ancient civilization inspired the vision of our founding fathers, shaping the nation they brought into being. We are custodians of that legacy in many ways, but in particular through our bilateral cultural property agreement that protects American collectors and museums from buying illicitly trafficked artifacts illegally stolen from Italian soil. Anyone who knows about me and my approach and my priorities knows that I am particularly enthusiastic about the Cultural Heritage Center, which oversees these protection efforts in collaboration with our partners, including Italy, which was one of our greatest partners. And my understanding is this tremendous embassy here, which is really a museum in its own right, is also a testament to our collaborative achievements in that regard. And in fact, there are many items here that were retrieved as a result of these very important cooperative efforts. So it's a special honor to be able to acknowledge that in this physical space. And I have a whole litany of incredible items. I'll spare you the entire list, but just to name some of them, we have the repatriation of over 600 looted or stolen antiquities, works of art, including life-size bronze statue of an Umbrian warrior stolen and a mosaic of Orpheus from the late imperial period. And just last month, we returned a 1st century AD marble head of Alexander the Great as Helios. It was excavated from the Roman Forum and later stolen from a Roman museum. And so we have so many examples of that, and my understanding is the Carabinieri is especially sophisticated and effective in these interdiction efforts and to repatriating these cultural artifacts where they belong. So we have many other items. Again, I'll spare you the whole list, but the Venice Biennale, just one of the many examples of the important exchanges that we do and that we have forthcoming. And we had a tremendous conversation about future opportunities. Really, the sky's the limit. Italy is a cultural superpower, among other things, and I think that really affords a lot of amazing opportunities for us. Looking ahead, we have the Olympics in Milano, Paralympic Winter Games will bring our countries together on a global stage. We are very grateful to Italy for hosting Team USA at next year's Games and look forward to hosting the Italia team at the 2028 Games in Los Angeles. And so altogether, across all of our programs, more than 50,000 Italians and Americans have been part of exchanges that bring our countries even closer together. Multiple Pulitzer Prize winners, Nobel laureates, Italian prime ministers, presidents, American and Italian ambassadors. This distinguished group includes the aforementioned ambassador whose participation in the IVLP is a testament to these exchanges and how they work and how they create enduring connections. So his story really illustrates what we can achieve on a larger scale. So this works shapes futures, it builds networks, it enhances the American reputation as stewards of a heritage far older than the United States. These aren't just fellowships, they aren't just exchanges or agreements, they are strategic platforms that allow us to lead together, and if we do them right, we lead with creativity, innovation, and a bold vision. There's one thing about futurism, it is bold, it's fearless, and just to express this fearlessness, this is an Italian movement that rejects fashion and even pasta. Doesn't get bolder than that. So if we approach our own position and our own challenges with that kind of boldness, just as Depero himself imagined, I think we're equal to the opportunities that we have ahead. And so thank you so much for having me. This is such an exciting event and an honor, and thanks especially to the ambassador.
Thank you very much, Mr. Senior Official. Thanks a lot. I have now the pleasure to welcome on stage our speakers for tonight, Vesela Sretenovic, scholar and curator, along with the curator of the exhibition, Maurizio Scudiero, director of the Archivio Depero in Italy, and Nicola Lucchi, research director at Magazzino Art Foundation. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Undersecretary Beatty, and everyone in attendance for being here. And what an honor, what a great opportunity to talk about Italian art. That's always something fresh. And I want to start with you, Maurizio. Well, His Excellency, the ambassador already told us quite a bit about Fortunato Depero and his inventiveness and his character and the kind of work that spanned many different fields, not only paintings, but advertisement and fashion, as you demonstrate tonight. But can you describe him for us in a few words, and especially can you tell us something about what our public is to expect as they approach the exhibition? What will they find in this exhibition?
Okay. Actually, Ambassador tell almost all, so we could speak about another artist. I'm joking, of course. Well, Depero was the first futurist who came to go to New York and really fulfill what the futurists in Italy only imagined. So the skyscraper, the subway. He came from a small town in the North Italy. Rovereto is 200 kilometers from the border with Austria, 100 kilometers from Yannick Sinner's hometown. But at the time, the region was under Austria. So Depero escaped and go to Rome, and together with Marinetti, Boccioni, and others, start in the 1914 to manifestation to go into war, not with Austria, according the previous papers, but against Austria, in order to free Trento and Trieste, and to close the ideal project of a unity Italia. So he made a lot of stuff that it could be very, very long time to explain, but let's say that the first thing is that Depero in 1915 wrote an important manifesto with Balla, because you must know that the futurists used it to write manifestos, theoric manifesto, in order to say today what they will do tomorrow. The project is fundamental. Every time I held a lecture about futurism, I say, futurism is the first avant-garde of the 20th century. There is always somebody who say, Cubism is 1907. I say, okay, but Cubism is not an avant-garde. There were not a project to go on the theory and so on. In this manifesto of 1915, that called futurist reconstruction of the universe, Depero and Balla said that we had to go over painting. This is precisely what the Italian criticism did not, because until the 1918, the Italian criticism was painting-centered. And inside painting-centered were Boccioni-centered. So Depero couldn't be appreciated in Italy and also abroad before, because he wasn't actually not a true painter. He was a graphic. He used scissors and colored paper to make his creation.
Yeah.
And Depero dealt with, as you say, fashion and pasta.
And Campari.
And Campari.
Yes.
He was very...
No, certainly. Sir. I agree completely with what you say. Like, we're moving away from an art that is centered on painting and the classical forms and sculpture even. His sculptures are marionettes. Yeah. So again, a very interactive.
Use the puppets instead, real actors, a real dancer.
Right.
with avant-garde music in 1918, so very,
And really-
very early.
And thinking about robots as he was
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
that. So absolutely.
And with Campari, he gone with a good collaboration from since the 1924 until 1937.
Absolutely.
And I think he drank a lot of Campari also.
He might, you know. And Vesela, thank you for being also here with us. And you're an expert of all things modern and contemporary when it comes to art, at least. And I would like for you to help us situate futurism a little bit in a more broad sense. Yes. So we know it starts in Italy in 1909. Those are tense times for the world at all, times of social change, technological change, as Undersecretary Biri was mentioning. What were some of the main themes and ambitions of futurism, and how did it compare or potentially compete with some of the other? We mentioned Cubism, which was more still painting on the easel, but there were other movements that were energetic.
Well, first of all, thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. A microphone is not my friend often, so thank you all for inviting me, and thank you for Nicola for this introduction and question. For full disclosure, yes, I'm a scholar of modern contemporary art, not of futurism. So,
Okay.
and I'm not Italian, and I don't drink Campari. So, but tonight I might.
Three mistakes.
Three negations. So with that, let me just, also we don't have any images, and I'm trained as an art historian with philosophy background. So I'm not going to talk and give you one-on-one answer to the question about futurism, but more focus on, as you said, themes, directions, and contextualize the movement and therefore the exhibition. Futurism started as a literary movement. To remind some of you who may or may not know, Tommaso Marinetti was a poet and somebody who was active in theater and music, not a painter, not an artist. So it did start with a manifesto that was first published in 1909, as you said, in Le Figaro, the French paper, and in French. He was bilingual, as I understand, as I know a little bit. And from then on, really, the painters joined him. So I wouldn't say it was just, it was the first, as you said, and I agree with you, avant-garde movement, and as opposed to Cubism that we always associate as the beginning of avant-garde in 1907 with Picasso and Mademoiselle d'Avignon. It started with a theoretical premise that it went beyond art and would aim to change the society and culture. The notion of speed. This is the beginning of, the industrialization started in the 19th century, in the mid-19th century, but continue. We have an airplane, we have an automobile, we have telegram, we have X-rays. Those are exciting technological movements that happen at that time. This is also a time of anarchism. This is a time of anti-Christianity, or the movement against Christianity that took place from Mondrian onward in different directions. So I think it was a zeitgeist, something in the air, in the spirit of the beginning of the century, yes, that futurism took a part of. And that is the intersection that I feel that they shared with other movements, not just Cubism. Aesthetically or conceptually, they share traits, what is Cubism, but also what the futurists inherited, I think, is something from Neo-Impressionism, sort of dissolvement of figurative art into abstraction, using colors, using planes, using line, using points, or that's why pointillism or divisionism. But that, and then also with Art Nouveau or Art Deco, because that was also in the air, especially in Paris. However, the theme was to put the spectator in the center. The theme was to bring art and life together, not to divorce them. Whereas Cubism was very much into aesthetics and kind of wanted to revolutionize art by negating figuration and foreground and background. This was thematic and conceptual breakdown with the tradition. This revolutionary anti-establishment spirit, then the need to change the world that was expressed, as Maurizio said, through manifestos that were stepping stone for anything else, for any action, call of action, call of also negation of tradition. I mean, I can understand that being surrounded with Renaissance antiquity, you want, enough is enough. You want a breakthrough. You want something else. You want something new. Technology inspires you. And you don't want to be traditionalist. You also use, and maybe problematically so, the war as a hygiene of new society that could be misinterpreted or was misinterpreted later on in connection to fascism. Perhaps we can look at it as a call for cultural social revolution. Perhaps we can think of it nowadays in terms of socially engaged art. All of that is happening at the beginning of the 20th century, and I think that is the way to look at futurism. Also, I think it was promising utopian, just like Russian constructivism was, sort of back and forth. This is about the same time happening, being pre-war, emerging in pre-war time, yet going through the First World War, facing the Second World War, really difficult times. Then if we think in a larger context, after them we have Dada, this kind of spirit of negation. We also have Nietzschean, philosophy that was sort of integrated in this kind of rebellious spirit. All of that mélange of philosophies and aesthetics is what I think characterizes futurism. And then the first phase that sort of ended with the First World War, and then the second phase that ends 44 with the death of Marinetti.
Absolutely.
I think we can go on and on, but
that's a wonderful summary.
I hope not 101 art history.
It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect, and it's true that it's this new world of these Italian young artists. You must imagine that they are burdened truly by the weight of the heritage, right? Every time they put paintbrush to canvas, the question is, but look at what Michelangelo did, and what can you do after Michelangelo?
And also
so you have to reject it in a sense.
And also they rejected museums, they rejected archives, which I think it's very, kind of interesting to think about nowadays, trying to get out of the museum walls.
They wanted to burn the museum.
Yeah, well, there we go. Maybe went a little too far. But.
And pave highways in Venice.
Yeah.
Which but Maurizio, I want to go back to you, and there is an important connection to the United States in this exhibition and with Depero, already mentioned, and it's the fact that, in fact, Depero spent some time in New York in the late 1920s and a little piece of 1930. It was a time when the city was booming with skyscrapers, advertising, modern design, but it's also, of course, the time of the stock market crash of 1929. So I would like for you to tell us a little bit about that particular moment of Depero's career, which is also represented in the exhibition. So how did he come to New York, and what was the reception of his art here in the US at the time? And also, last question, how did he take New York back with him to Italy? Like, because he did go back eventually.
Okay.
So.
Well, despite his name is Fortunato, that we can translate lucky, he got the crisis also.
Yes, not very fortunato.
It was
indeed.
very bad for him to work. But in a way, he had some patrons that followed him, and his field was not, as I said, the painting. So working with the big magazines like Vogue, like Vanity Fair, and so on, New Yorker, and working with the theater. He projected costumes for the new scenery and so on. He go on through the crisis very well, let's say. And he was in New York from 1928 until 1930, 2 full years, from fall to fall. And the first thing, he was amazed were the complexity architectonical of the town, over and under the surface. So it was something that in Italy was never imagined, the subway. And he wrote also poetry regarding the New York and the speed of the train and in the underground. And then all these go inside his creativity in a way that you will see in the exhibition. Sometimes that is ironic, make you laugh. Here we can see just a bit, a part of a cover of the auto atlas of the publisher, the news. And you think auto atlas is something that you use to check the way to go from New York to Albany to everywhere. And it should have a cover that is educational. Instead, Depero projected a cover with a lot of confusion. You see, the man at the border is drunk. This one is shouting at the car that perhaps kill him. And you will see the complete image in the exhibition. So I always wondered, how come that the publisher gave him the work? Because it's terrible.
Yes.
And the same you will see with the cover of Vanity Fair of the July of 1930. At the time, for what I check, women were not supposed to smoke in the public areas. And Depero designed this cover with a man with the horns. In the horns, he put inside a big cigarette. And then he had in the mouth a cigarette. Vanity Fair was a magazine for women. So the message is clear. Betray your husband and smoke. But Vanity Fair published it. Okay. So he had a vision of the graphic art to offer to the possible buyer in New York that, I don't know, they always buy it. Maybe hypnotize the people. Stories coming from the poor Italy, and they buy a lot of creation of Depero, even in going back for a while in the time with Campari. Had a lot of Campari creation. And this Campari creation come from a new idea he put inside Campari. Like that in the 1990 Campari's fantasy. It was something like in the 20s with Campari. He put a fantasy in a way to show the product that before him was like you were drawing still in the century before. You see the Campari creation of the early 20s are like to be in the
1890s,
90s, so
Campari for a long time pursued sort of an Art Nouveau style that was, relating to a bourgeois clientele, et cetera, and then all of a sudden it turns into these puppets and mascots, and it's playful, and it's about, there is that famous ad with the umbrella upside down, and it says, if only the rain were Campari, and the umbrella becomes a big cup,
as a pipe,
and drink it, exactly.
Drink while
so it's a very strong, and I guess in the United States there was then a public for this type of strong visuals,
completely
and strong
different
graphics.
because.
But I want to go back to you again, Vesela. For then, it seems that this was a relatively successful short endeavor for Depero in difficult times of the stock market crash. But what were the fortunes of, if we think about more art historically once again, of the study of futurism and the appreciation of futurism in the United States, I would say after the war, because I think it's also an interesting case of cultural diplomacy, since we are in an embassy. How did things go?
1949.
I didn't answer your last question after.
Okay.
I forgot.
So 1949, MoMA, Museum of Modern Art in New York, organizes a big exhibition on Italian art of 20th century, and futurism is a part of it. And that was really the biggest exposure of not only Italian art, but futurism, with a substantial catalog, and etc. which followed later on the Ito Museum acquisitions. MoMA is one of the museums that had the most futurist work. So is Philadelphia, Camper Museum in Washington University in St. Louis, and did I say Philadelphia? Yes, I did, and Guggenheim. Then nothing happens almost 50 years or more. I'm not good in math. 2014, Guggenheim organizes exhibition Reconstructing the Universe that is solely dedicated to futurism, dividing the two phases. The first phase, again, that I mentioned, that ends with the First World War, and the second phase that ends 44. So it was reconstructing the universe from 1909 to 1944. And so the exhibition was also all-encompassing, including and design and fashion and painting, interdisciplinary, as we would say. So back to the art historical context, what I think marks futurism as super interesting and relevant to today is this interdisciplinarity. Similarly, I'm thinking the same time you have Bauhaus in Germany, in Weimar in the 20s, which also integrated design, architecture, technology, and art with the very similar aim to kind of build a new society. For, not utopian, but the society that will bring equity and equality that we talk so much about and so much needed today. So those are interesting moments for me, coming or working across history, bridging the past and the present, that I find that futurism resonates with today very much. And also the exhibition at the Guggenheim. Later on, I found out that in 2000, celebrating the 100th anniversary of publishing of the manifesto, MoMA organized in the library only an exhibition dedicated to the literary works of futurism, kind of marking that anniversary. But obviously, there is a need for revisionist interpretations or reconsiderations, and maybe connecting futurism today. As somebody who works mostly with contemporary art, but being an art historian, traditionally trained, I think those connections are extremely important, and that's the way we can really understand both the past and the present.
Absolutely. And I think you're very right in thinking, it's really true that not until 2014, with the Guggenheim exhibition, we had a sense of the complexity of futurism, because the 1949 was very much paintings and sculpture. So Depero, in fact, was not in that exhibition, despite the fact that he was, from the very beginning, one of the futurists, but because of his work being so out of the traditional canons of what one expects from a museum, even MoMA, which is by no means a traditional museum in those years, it still didn't make the cuts.
That exhibition was the product of a short eyes criticism. The exhibition came from Paris, and they couldn't do an exhibition complete. So they closed the exhibition in 1912 in Paris. So they cut off Balla, who is the real alter ego of Boccioni.
Yes.
Boccioni was always figurative. Balla came to the abstract, was the very engine of the futurism at the time. So Depero was later, come later, so he was out. But I wanted to say that you asked me what happened to Depero after New York.
Yeah, how did he bring New York back to Rovereto?
So Depero, when he got back to Rovereto, it was a shock, because
I bet.
it was a shock. From the subway, from the skyscraper, he get back to the pines. And but most of all, it was the fact was that Depero in New York see and touch what the futurists only imagine in Italy. And he saw the reality was that. And so back in Italy, there was nothing more to imagine. So he had a fall of creativity in a way. The color of his paintings became colder, and so on. And he was it go along all the 30s. When with that, I defined rustic futurism because it was a mixing of figurative with futurist style, but there were cows, grass, and alpine cabin.
Landscapes, yeah, it's true.
Then he came back to New York in the 47, but it was a completely different situation.
It was a very changed situation for sure. And if I can ask you another question here, now you have studied and curated exhibitions on Depero for many, many years.
Yeah.
I wonder, in preparing this one, is there anything new that you discovered or something that you looked at with different eyes as you were installing this particular show? Like maybe you were telling me that some of the decisions in you have done them not only in chronological order, but you used a beautiful expression. You said, "I hung this show with sentiment."
Yeah.
So
With feeling.
Yes. What was the feeling this
Because
time?
despite I have the map, we planned where to put each works, but when you are inside the room and you put all the works along the walls, you see, we have four drawings, it's all gray. Here, miscolor. So we change, and this is the actual result. Yes, if we do not find something new anytime, even using the same works, it would be better to change the job.
Okay.
Because Depero has an attitude that every time you see it, you find something new. I'm sorry that Mr. Pagliara didn't come before, because I explained something that I will explain later in the exhibition. That show something that we many times we didn't look at, that a cover in a publication that should be educational, Depero make a project that is the opposite. So sometimes you look at one thing of Depero for years, and then they tell you, we need an exhibition. You put together the stuff and you see this in another way.
In another way, absolutely. And thinking about Depero and his legacy today, precisely, you said before that you think that there are many aspects of futurism and perhaps many aspects of Depero that, and his interdisciplinarity, for instance, you spoke about, that still speak to contemporary questions. Do you see, though, his art, his style specifically, as something of a insect in amber, like as something that is fully historicized? When you look at the graphic work, does it feel old in a way, or is there still a freshness that you think speaks to contemporary styles, for instance?
Well, I think stylistically or aesthetically speaking only, there is a period style, if I can say it, that you can contextualize, especially we art historians do have a tendency to compartmentalize things, which is not always good, but you have to have a system and kind of a framework. So in that sense, you could easily look at his design, or what we see here, and say, well, this is 20s, 30s, the mixture of Art Deco, a little bit of Cubism, a little bit of fragmented forms. But what I liked, that I learned now today, is his spirit, actually, and sense of humor, and kind of this mischievous behavior. Like he likes to twist things around, or and bring humor and tease the people to look at, and with the design. And what's interesting to me is also, probably he was a visionary of his own time, integrating design and graphics with his notations sometimes that are hard to read, but they're there if you're carefully looking, that adds to the image. And that, living in the world of advertisement, every time you go online or on Instagram, it pops up because your phone heard that you're looking for a new machine or blah, blah, blah. I think it's very relevant and interesting to, in that sense, think of his art today and how if he was alive, what would he make of how
Indeed,
we
and
live?
that I think should be a final question for all of us before we open maybe for a few questions to the public.
Luca, if I may, you ask sometimes she see some creation old. Okay. This is of 1924. You think it is old? This, just imagine this color in the mind, in the eyes of the people when the futurists, I use the term perform the best, because they were in a promenade in the town like Torino and Milan, and everybody get crazy. Somebody throw tomatoes, but I mean, so the creation of Depero were really in advanced time with the contrast of color. That's why sometimes in Italy they refuse it. It takes the stuff, bring it to New York, and they accept it.
Absolutely. So, if he were alive today, he would be looking forward. So, what would he be busy with?
Depero?
Yeah.
Who knows? It's very difficult because Depero, surprisingly, you find it every time different. But I say that if he was, I always said, but not to you. If he was alive today, Depero will draw comics.
Well, I could see that.
Yeah.
With the humor that is embedded, maybe not like in your
That's a
face, but
possibility.
it's there.
What about you? What do you think?
I don't know. I would just be curious to see what he thinks of AI.
AI, okay.
And advertising that is everywhere, as I mentioned, and also what he thinks of activism and art today. Those would be my questions to him.
Yeah.
Before we finish, I would like to thank Ambassador, the embassy, all the staff, Melchiorre and Francesca Baldanzi, that really help us to set up the exhibition physically.
Absolutely.
And for this possibility to show Depero even in Washington, and to show Depero for first exhibition of the ambassador. So we think he's happy to start with a real striking artist.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you. And do we have any questions from the public, perhaps? Undersecretary, perhaps you?
Yes, thank you so much for that fascinating presentation. There's so many questions I'd like to ask, but I'll just ask one, and it's inspired by the conversation about what is old and what is new. It strikes me as one thing that I may be incorrect, but seems old, is just the whole idea of a fully integrated movement that intersects with philosophy, art, literature, across all domains to create a kind of integrated context for a new way of living or a response to some underlying sociological, technological transformation. And I'm wondering, insofar as you agree with that assessment that this kind of integrated movement response is very much a kind of 20th century phenomenon, why we don't really have that anymore, what the preconditions of that might be that have been lost?
That's an interesting question. Well, it's interesting that futurism did that before World War I, and then after World War II, there was a neo-avant-garde and many movements, even in the United States, like Fluxus, but though they were more loose. Neo-Dada,
Neo-futurism.
Neo-futurism even. These things did come together, and in Italy,
Arte povera.
but not quite, I would say, with the same. What it took for futurism to function was also an impresario figure such as Marinetti, who was really a force of nature.
He was a manager.
He was a manager, on top of a poet and many other things, but he had cash to spare, something to...
A lot.
A lot. So, yeah, I think it's a mix of these things. But perhaps we have also lost some of the hope that for all the futurism, of course, also glorified violence and war and things that we don't necessarily want to endorse. But
We do not forget
but there was optimism
that
too.
was a poet, and poetry will save the world.
Okay, that's
He was
true
a
too.
poet. The only movement with a poet was his creator. We found something like in the Russian futurism with Mayakovsky before the revolution. It was a movement that born from the poetry, and the artists joined after, like Italian futurism.
That's a good, maybe there's a word. That's maybe a key to see that.
I would add to that the word disillusionment with history and present time across the board, no names attached, and also education. Education that doesn't value humanities and art. Okay, I won't go any further.
So let's see the exhibition.
Yes.
What do you say?
Very good. Thank you.
I hope I wasn't negative. But
Thank you very much to all our speakers, and you're all welcome to see the exhibition and enjoy some Campari cocktails in the hall. Thank you.